Making ghee is actually super simple. Today, I'm going to show you how fast and easy this process really is.
I've got a lot of cleaning to do today, but before I do, I'm gonna get some clarified butter started. The great thing about my method for making this is that I don't really have to do anything or watch it. There's some difference between clarified butter and ghee making, but mostly they're the same. They're both shelf stable, they both remove the milk solids. So with ghee, you heat the butter on the stove until it separates, and then you heat it a little bit longer until the milk solids that are on the bottom actually get a little bit caramelized, and that gives it a real nutty flavor. The thing about that is that you have to really watch it, otherwise it could burn, and you have to stir it constantly. This is just not something I have time for as a busy mom of 4 young children. So I can barely not burn mac and cheese at this point in my life. So we're just doing this the easy way, making some clarified butter because I do like having the shelf stable butter. It's part of my food storage, and I also really like it for anything I'm making in the pan because I tend to burn my butter that I'm warming up to cook with. So if I'm pan searing steaks, or doing shrimp in the pan, or making pancakes or French toast, clarified butter is definitely the way to go. My method of clarified butter making is that I put all the butter together in a pan. This butter is actually still frozen. I just took it right out of the freezer. Put it all in a pan, put it in the oven at 240 degrees, 250 degrees, and then I just leave it there for like an hour. And when it is ready, I'll know because there will be little floaties on the top and a whole lot of milk solids on the bottom and a whole lot of butter in the middle. This butter is done. All melted through. There's a little bit of a crust on the top and all the milk solids on the bottom. It's been in for probably 2 hours. Longer than it needed to be, but I was busy, so. Alright, so we've got our butter here, all separated. Don't mind the kids in the background. It's good to go now. So this stuff on the top, there's like a crust on the top, and when you pull it off, so I'm just going to scoop off this crust and go ahead and stick it here. And even when they fall, these crusty pieces fall down in, they still kind of float around in there, so they're pretty easy to pick off.
I think that these are actually sugars that have crystallized and come up to the top. I don't know exactly what they are, but as you can see, I just kind of skim them off the top. After I've skimmed off all the floaties, I go ahead and just scoop up that oil and pour it straight into a jar. The milk solids really stay at the bottom. They're heavy and they don't float up to the top even when they're agitated a little bit. So this scooping method has worked great for me. I'm also gonna try something new with this batch. My mother-in-law gave me this gravy fat separator to try out, so I'm gonna pour some of this in and see if I can use that to separate the milk solids. The only problem is that in gravy, the fat comes to the top, and in this, the milk solids go to the bottom, so it's kind of the opposite of what I want. But you'll see here in a second, I'm just gonna try and dump most of the milk solids out and then see if I can get the oil to go down through the bottom. I tried it first with dumping some of it out of the top and it wasn't great. You can see here I'm dumping those milk solids down through the bottom, and that actually did work kind of good, but since I had to dump the butter into the gravy separator, it did kind of mix up in there, so the butter that I did this way wasn't as clear, and I definitely wouldn't do this method again. My microphone died when I filmed this, so I'm just gonna voice this over for you. This is my final product. I ended up with 4 pints of ghee and 1 pint of milk solids, which was great. That came from 2 pounds of butter. I feel like when I do this, it's great because I don't lose any butter. It just changes the form of it. I do use the milk solids. I use them when I cook, basically to substitute anything I'm using with milk, and it just makes really rich flavor. So I love it for like pancakes or mac and cheese. Definitely save those milk solids. You just need to stick them in the fridge and use them up usually within like a week or so. With the clarified butter, it's shelf stable and it'll just turn into this more solid yellow color and is good for quite a while. I haven't tested out how long this butter stays good for, but I am holding back some of it to test that. I'll be keeping a batch and I'll probably make a video on it in like a year, see if it still tastes the same and is good. As far as sealing the jars and storing them, just make sure when you put your butter in that you are cleaning off the tops of those jars really well with some like vinegar or hot water on a paper towel. Get all that oil off so that there's nothing up there in the seal. Then stick your lid on, stick your rings on. You're going to want to use metal lids. If you do Tatler lids, they won't seal. Tatler lids do not do good with vacuum sealing. So if you use Tatler lids, don't do it for this. But it should take about 45 minutes and then that lid will pop down, indicating that there's been a vacuum in there. And that's just from, the hot air cooling and contracting. And you could probably vacuum seal these if you wanted to, but I think if you put the lids on when they're hot, you don't really need to probably. This is not canned butter. The canning is a whole different process. It's just vacuum sealed down to keep the air out and keep out any contaminants. And it's shelf stable because it is just the fat from the butter. I hope you enjoyed this easy clarified butter making. It's definitely the way to go if you don't have time to babysit something on the stove, which I almost never do. So go ahead and make yourself some clarified shelf-stable butter. Get that in your food storage and use it for your pancakes. It's seriously, if you use the milk solids and the ghee for making pancakes, it's my new favorite thing. It's so delicious. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful and informational for you. Good luck with your butter making.